Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down Fallout.
We are back in the Wasteland after last week's huge episode and have some major things to talk about. Episode 7 is titled The Handoff, and throughout we see the cold fusion MacGuffin's fate is in the balance. We see the handoff not only in the past but also the present and get lots of the intricacies of the powers at play. Last week centered around the Ghoul dealing with a serious case of hole through the body that would kill a normal person, but luckily the super mutants like myself, Super-Mutant Ron Perlman, he had some uranium to curb his fever, eh? And while resting up after refusing to join the Mutants' war against the Enclave, Dad and Max managed to find him. Maximus was currently in the possession of cold fusion, which sort of sets up a choice that Cooper's seen before. Cold fusion is something that can let you rule the Wasteland as a benevolent leader or as an evil tyrant. Deep down though, the Ghoul has one mission, and that is to find his wife and child. Luckily, he knows the location, which is deep in the management vault. Now, speaking of that, Lucy was brought there to stay with her dad. She wants to bring him to justice after learning he blew up Shady Sands, which also led to her mother becoming a ghoul. However, he presented his motivations for the brain control interface in the form of All Quiet on the Western Front. He wants everyone to just stop fighting, hit the thumbs up, be docile and agreeable. Right now, the Wasteland isn't safe, but if everyone has this device, there will potentially be peace. Yes, mate, but who controls them? Well, that's what we're going to get into, and that takes us into the episode itself. Now we begin with a flashback of Steph escaping from the Uranian city and Tim and camp out in the woods. As we know, Canadians were persecuted heavily and the country was annexed during the Sino-American War. Seen as somewhere that was filled with valuable resources, it was taken over by the US of A in a decade-long move that started in 2067. The opening of Fallout 1 actually featured a soldier in power armor executing a Canadian citizen, which showed how bleak the situation was. This is something that we also see in the credits, and I'll kind of break those down as we get towards the end of the breakdown. In this intro, she's held up by the Brotherhood of Steel member, but saved by a man who detonates an explosive. This reminds me of the Super-Mutant Suiciders, who are a very annoying enemy type from the games. Awakened in the present though, I love how Chet has an eye mask while she just raw dogs it on the pillow even with her wound. Just highlights how prim and comfortable his life is, whereas she's really had to go through it. Throughout the episode, we see her at several stages in her life, including post-war. This also leads to her wedding as well, in which she too has to run just like this opening. This is all about her being persecuted, but the second time, it's kind of through her own actions, which were kind of caused by what happened here, and made her into the person that she is. Does that make sense? Brings things very full circle from the introduction though, but there she was persecuted for things out of her control. Remembering her ally dying due to the family likeness, I'm guessing that this might be her sister. Her mother? Whoa, no way, you look young enough to be her sister. Anyway, she died in the aftermath of the blast, and this is something that Steph carries heavily. She instructed Steph to survive at all costs, and this has clearly shaped her thinking. She's got in with a bad company, moved vaults twice, and ended up killing Woody, I'm guessing. Steph's just told to think of them as Americans instead of human beings, but I'd never do that, mate. I love all 41% of my subscribers from the good old US of A. Yeehaw! Going to the bathroom, we then see there's some Albaline baby powder, which is now considered a vintage item. Manufactured throughout the 50s and 60s, I love this little touch to the world, and even how the toothbrush and nightgown is Vault-Tec blue. Usually, you know, the show uses brands from the games only like Abraxo and such, but yeah, this was a great touch. Now in the past, she continues further into the woods, and we also see her snatching some pork and beans which look just like the ones in the game. She then enters the US, and we can see the flag which represents the 13 states of the Commonwealth. The government actually did this to consolidate power and basically merge the states so they had more control over the country as a whole. I love the logo as blood fills it up, and this striking red is of course the colour of the Canadian flag. After the title, we then cut back to Hank's vault, where we can hear When You're Smiling by Nat King Cole. This is a song about how joy can spread and the whole world could smile in unison, which we can see with the brain control workers. They're all getting along, hitting the thumbs up, subscribing, and happily working at their desks to do something progressive. Yay, capitalism! Lucy does see this as a way to save the world, but she also says that it's wrong. Hank then explains how it works, and basically it makes them very placid by cleaning their horrible memories. I kind of view it as like a sort of opposite to the rage virus in 28 Days Later, and whereas that ramps you up into a very aggressive state, this just fully calms you down. Controlling how much amnesia they have controls the level of how docile they are and basically just removes their feelings of mental pain. There's an extra thing that we'll of course talk about later, but this is what it's sold as on the surface. Now this scene reminds me of Thaddeus saying that he'd probably be a good person like Lucy if he didn't have to survive up on the surface. Hank has removed the trauma from these people's minds, and we do see that he's kinda right. Also love how Hank's still wearing the handcuffs, showing that Lucy still doesn't trust him. Killed me as well how Lucy has to ask her dad how to destroy it. As always, he's just really helpful and even takes her for driving lessons. There's not really any usable cars in the Wasteland, and the games didn't exactly have driving lessons. Plus, the vaults didn't have much room for vehicles, so this gives a nice father and daughter moment that also sets up the car ride later. Just works really well as a bonding moment though, and when Lucy turns on his dad, we get a mirror scene because of it. Oop, and I've just remembered, there was actually a highwayman vehicle you could use to travel across the world map, so there were vehicles, but moving on. Now to Bedelia by Billy Randolph in the High Hatters, they then go to the basement. A line that really sticks out is how Hank says he wishes they had a normal life. However, his ambition forced him to wreck things. Though the vault said other purposes, they could have potentially stayed there and lived very happy lives. Don't know why, that's all that welcome to Derry stuff, constantly saying that throughout that, but yeah, he's kind of like the dad who has an affair or goes off to get milk and never comes back, and he did things for himself at the expense of his kids. To him though, things just aren't black and white, and I'm sure he could justify it as him having to help the surface. Lucy questions this as she goes to the vault, and we see the Roman army guy who attacked her is now mopping the floor. The mainframe door and sign as well are just like the high security ones that we see in the game. Lucy then says how the Legion are still out there and her dad could stop them from hurting a lot of people. She's seen firsthand what they're like, but is it ethical? Ooh, you'll have to tell me in the comments. We then cut to the NCR base and catch up with the Ghoul and the gang. Maximus then references the last fight they had that went down in Philly during Season 1. Thaddeus also mentions how he's found using the power armors very hard and even picking up a cup becomes almost an impossible task. There is new power armor introduced in the episode though, but we will break that down later. Thaddeus then tries to find some common ground, and it's kind of like the Ghoul, the bad and the ugly. The Ghoul then lays out the long and convoluted plan, which involves a lot of side quests and picking up some upgrades. Okay, so we've just recently had the holidays and also New Year where people tend to spend. Getting your finances in order for 2026 is probably going to be difficult as it's so hard to keep track of everything. If you're like me, you probably have lots of different subscription services like streaming sites, your gym membership, and whatever else on top of it. Chances are you've probably forgotten some stuff you're paying for as well, and even when you're trying to cancel it, it's like trying to pull teeth. That's where our sponsors Rocket Money come in. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It also monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It can cut your spending in half, and it allows you to cancel in most cases directly from the app with just a few taps. So you avoid charges and save time either going through websites or having to sit on the phone for ages and ages and ages. And I know you hate that because I do as well. I will sometimes even pay for stuff just to not sit on the phone. Beyond that, there's also automatic transaction categorization across accounts. You can group things together and tag certain transactions to reveal spending patterns or add context to what some charges are. You can also set budgets and goals as well as setting personalized insights and reports. Rocket Money will also send real-time alerts for large transactions when there's an upcoming bill, a refund, or a low balance. The app also consolidates checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard to give users a clear view of their financial picture. Rocket Money is just a massive money and time saver that will help you reach your financial goals faster. Join today at rocketmoney.com/spoilers. That's rocketmoney.com/spoilers, rocketmoney.com/spoilers. Thanks. And at this point, Maximus gets out the cold fusion and Cooper starts to question how he got it. At gunpoint, which is nice. Thaddeus hilariously tries to talk the situation down, and I love the way it's a tense standoff and he's there just cracking jokes. But to Cooper, this is obviously the thing that broke the world and took his family from him. He basically did a Faustian deal to save the planet and was a puppet in between the parties that was constantly manipulated and used. Now it's all coming down to a handoff, which of course ties in the title. This also comes back around because of the other handoff, and it's so well handled oft. Either way, Maximus says it's for Lucy, and we then see the first handoff in the episode with Coop tipping Steph. Working minimum wage at the Lucky 38, I love the costume design here. Her clothes are wide and it nicely foreshadows the wedding dress we see later on. Earlier in the season, there was also a theory that it was Steph who kissed Coop on the casino floor, and we even had it in the breakdown script originally. However, we then checked the credits and it was a different actress, but I did see a lot of comments asking why we hadn't pointed it out. But yeah, in a way, you guys were alright, and she does work here, and I think is very clearly ambitious about getting in a vault. Coop says, though, that if people do the right thing, they can avoid them altogether, but obviously she's had to murder and steal to get where she is. She knows the world isn't like that, and evil will likely always prevail. Told to escort Hank to his room, it also clears up how she got a place in the vault. Considering that she also knew about Hank's keepsake box and what was in it, I do wonder how that's going to come into play in the finale. But yeah, I'm guessing that she dropped him back in his room and then stayed there to get herself a job, which is hustle culture. We then cut to the bar, which is the same one that Coop visited on the strip as a ghoul. It's so good seeing this scene in the past, and I love the different actions the character takes. Initially he went there and drank because of what he had to do, which was handing over Lucy, which he of course knew was bad. Now though, he's trying to stay sober and do the right thing. There's also an animal head on the bar, which is different to the mutated creature that was there in the future. He's also keeping a low profile with a hat very reminiscent of Piper from the game. Meeting with Diane Welsh, she then says she's a good person trying to do the right thing. Obviously, she's a reflection of Lucy, and it sets up why he questions things with Lucy later down the line. Lucy has her own meeting with her later, which shows what could happen if she carries on this path of altruism, and Diane actually becomes a really important character. He asks why politicians can't sell the good ideals better and references how inept she was at the VA ceremony. As we've seen with our world though, fear and mistrust is a far more powerful message. Like Moldava, she wants to give free energy to everyone and even mentions how they can end the resource wars tonight. At this point in the timeline, it's been 25 years, and yeah, I just loved seeing firsthand how bad Steph had it and then that they could end this war tonight. Now the deal with the devil comes in when she says she can give it to someone who's better suited to look after it than her. That is, to the president who's landed at McCarran Airport. In the game, this is the airport that serves Las Vegas, but post-war, it's actually an NCR base. The airport's also a good way to sneak into the strip without having to pass the well check at the main strip gate. If you're friendly with the NCR, you can also use the monorail to reach the strip itself. You even had the NCR president arriving in New Vegas, albeit landing at the Hoover Dam, where you could take him out if you wanted. Anyway, we're kind of burying the lead here, but the president's played by none other than Clancy Brown, which is a massive throwback to the games. In them, Clancy actually voiced Rhombus, who was a member of the Brotherhood of Steel. The credits just list him as the president, and though we never found out what the final pre-war US president's name was, we did learn in Fallout 76 that it started with the I. There was a huge conspiracy as the president and most of the cabinet were missing 6 months before the bombs fell, and the reporter Mags Vicchio learned that he was on the Poseidon oil rig. Now, the president that we meet in Fallout 2 is actually named Dick Richardson, and the DI might be a reference to that. In the series, he was the main bad guy in Fallout 2 and was the leader of the Enclave, but the timelines are off for him to be that character. But yeah, if this isn't Dick Richardson, I do feel like the president here is more than likely a member of the Enclave. With that reveal as well, you can totally see why in the future Cooper just has this very, very cynical view of people saying they're going to do the right thing. At the moment though, he's very, very naive, and thus he hands the cold fusion over. Now you might remember that cold fusion was almost discovered by Lee Moldava, but Vault-Tec bought every company she worked for and turned it into a proprietary technology. There it was going to be used in the Garden of Eden devices that would terraform the Wasteland. At some point though, the Enclave managed to get a hold of it, which we saw in Season 1. Siggy then turned on the organization, which led to him losing his head trying to get it to Moldava 200 years later. Now, I'm somewhat of a scientist myself, and the way cold fusion works would vastly alter the power dynamics. Simply put, nuclear fusion needs extreme heat to force the nuclei close together into colliding. This is opposed to fission, which splits uranium causing energy. Fusion does not create any byproducts other than helium, while fission at the moment provides nuclear waste. So vastly different in terms of what causes the most damaging waste products. Great! So why aren't we using it, you might ask? Well, more energy is needed to create the fusion than is produced. So if cold fusion were achieved, it would be efficient and essentially limitless, cheap energy for the whole world. In the franchise, it was created amid the backdrop of the resource wars, so there was no way that Vault-Tec would allow their rivals and enemies to achieve it. This then provided a world of limited energies, and the scarce energy created the perfect environment for them to basically make loads of cash. In the game, House also needed it to power his stasis pod, and this would allow him to stay alive indefinitely so he could protect Las Vegas till the end of time. Now, as we saw last week, the Enclave are the big bad of the show that's been working in the background. They completely caused all this shit in the first season and manipulate a lot of the events, including Bob saying they should drop the bombs. They are also the other player that House didn't know existed. And although they're a shadowy organisation, we did learn more about them in Fallout 2 and discovered there that they wanted to wipe out everyone in the Wasteland, in that they aimed to modify the FEV to kill anyone who had the slightest bit of radiation exposure. So yeah, pretty much everyone on the surface. Now, I kind of see it as being akin to Hank, who wants to control the population and rule the Wasteland. The Enclave want to take things the extreme though, and rule the Wasteland by killing the population. Now, before the war, the Enclave were essentially the deep state boogeymen that we hear about in the real world. They're basically what was left of the government after the bombs fell, and were an insidious group within it that wanted to rule the world after wiping the slate clean. In the past, they covered up the existence of aliens and then started to draw up contingencies for a nuclear war with China. Now, as for locations they've been based at, both the Poseidon oil rig and White Ring's congressional bunker were constructed for the government to live out the end of days. There were also places such as Raven Rock that we saw in Fallout 3. Anyway, jumping back to the last episode, the reason that Siggy was at Vault-Tec HQ is that the Enclave were involved with the vaults. They wanted to use them for experiments with a view of heading into space. This would be on a multi-generational starship which would lead the descendants to colonize another planet, mainly because Earth would be completely uninhabitable. Thus, they needed the vaults to basically run experiments and see if it was possible for someone to survive in a container like this while we made our journey across the stars. Now, in the lore, the Appalachian Enclave were cut off, which led to a bloody Enclave civil war. One faction wanted to attack China and unleash the horrors of the Wasteland to trick the automated missiles into thinking it was DEFCON 1. In the end, this just left an AI named Modus, who did look rather similar to Siggy. There has even been a few times that this could be a copy of his conscience, and that would be quite a big twist. Don't know how it would work, mate, but it would be a big twist. Now, after the West Coast Enclave's plans were ruined by the destruction of their oil rig, the survivors headed to the capital, Wasteland. They seemingly brought hope to the Wasteland and presented the idea that they were going to use a giant purifier to make water safe in Washington, DC. Once again, it was all a ruse though, and they wanted to use the FEV to get rid of abominations. They were then either defeated or succeeded depending on the actions of the player, and there were some tired remnants in New Vegas which are clearly still operating out here. So we end with him handing it over to the US government. He has no clue that the bloke who blackmailed Bob is part of a secret organisation inside them though, so he's just handed over the people that he technically stole it from. At some point he's also going to be outed as a pinko and get divorced from his wife, and I'm guessing this lays the groundwork for that. Jumping back to the present, we then see them arming up and grabbing lots of weapons. Maximus picks up what looks like a grenade APW, while Thaddeus has a hunting or battle rifle from New Vegas. Here Thaddeus also tries to do some more Ghoul on Ghoul talk and reveals the mouth on his neck. Super-Mutant, mate, I'm telling you, Super-Mutant! The games have a wide variety of mutations though, and there was even a dude who had a tree that grew out of him. He then asks for a scope, which is a mod you can get in New Vegas. Maximus at this point is also a kind of young and idealistic reflection of Cooper, who thinks everything will work out if he hands it to someone good. However, Cooper's done this all before and realizes that he has to give it to Mr. House in order for it to actually do some good. So they need to rig the game. I think this kind of also reflects Maximus's mind state, as though he said the armor leads to no good in the desert, it's something that he ends up donning. Because yeah, you always end up back where you started. The armor's also attached to a power armor station, which you use in Fallout 4 and 76. The NCR power armor is actually something you can wear in the game, however it looks incredibly different to what we see Maximus wearing. This might be because Maximus is using the NCR Ranger power armor instead. The armor in the show is the T60, while the NCR one in the game is the T51B and T45. In Fallout New Vegas, the NCR managed to salvage from their war with the Brotherhood of Steel, and the servos were removed, so you didn't need any training before wearing them. However, as we heard from Harkness, the Commonwealth has motion-assisted servos now. There's also a difference in the HUD from the other power armors that we've seen so far. The HUD here is red as opposed to its usual orange, which is basically shown as a slight difference. Joining Norm waking up on the floor, we see Buds discussing his fate. The handbook says deathmate, and he gets smashed like the like button. It's here that we then return to Vault 32 and see the wedding celebrations are mounting up. We can hear the song I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, which is a classic by Vera Lynn. It's also the anthem of West Ham United. One day you're the European champions, the next day you're in a relegation battle. But yeah, it's a very upbeat and happy song on the surface, but when you get into the lyrics, it's actually quite depressing. The song's about how dreams and hopes all fade away and burst like bubbles in the air. Taken at face value, Chet's dreams are screwed and he's stuck living his life with a monster. Take my wife, for example. He's not even got an idea of why anything's happening, but he's just so excited for the wedding. On the notice board, we also have several signs, including a shooting range pamphlet. They're using 50 caliber rounds now, and you can also bring your kids, yay! The graphic there is also the one from the sniper perk in the game, and we have the ninja one to the right. Davey is also currently searching for his copy of Dean Electronics. In the games, this is a skill book that can permanently increase your repair skills. We also have a sign for Pipe Curious, and both Lucy and Steph did this during their time in the vault. The loving couple have a very tense moment in their home though, and this is when Chet makes a terrifying discovery. The sink is blocked, and he then fishes some glasses out the plug hole. However, dun dun dun, these are the ones that Woody wore. We last saw Woody when he reported Steph's illegal vault door opening to the Overseer, who also just happened to be Steph. Considering that Steph's up to no good and has a whole secret agenda, having Woody sniffing around is not something she needed, and Steph is basically marking her own homework. Last episode we even learned that he was missing, as Davey had been looking for him, and that was a pretty big clue that he'd come to an unsightly end. Chet already knew that Steph was from Vault 31, and this combined with her secret Canadian history means my guy should start panicking, cause we all bloody hate Canadians at this channel. Steph then says that Woody's been sent on a leadership exchange program, but we all know that his outies probably just up on the surface. Nah, the guy's as dead as this channel once the Fallout videos end. Back to making 400 Doctor Doom videos a week. I don't even think Chet thinks he's coming back though, due to the way he destroys his spectacles. Him being part of the leadership exchange program though is the same cover story that Betty used when Reg asked where Norm was in episode 1.
Norm has been sent for a leadership exchange program to Vault 31.
I love how we then jump from a blocked sink with an abundance of water to the grim fate of Vault 33. The water rationing's now in full effect, and showers and even flushing the toilet is banned. Flush that screen crush video right down with it. Screen flush! Betty then decides to hand over I love Ryan and Cole, I'm only kidding. Betty then decides to hand over the box to Steph, and the pair meet once more at the junction. As we saw, the box was in a safe behind a picture, and this was actually a painting from Fallout 4. It's a recreation of Napoleon crossing the Alps. However, if you look closely, you can see Todd Howard's face, who's the executive producer of Bethesda. Very, very good Easter egg, and it's in a keepsake box, just like the one that Bob was filling earlier in the season. We then get a far more tense standoff than last time, and Betty goes to Steph saying she just wants peace. However, Steph is from a world where the violent and manipulative survive, and I just don't think the twee people in the vault are cut out for her. Jumping to Freeside, this is a play on Fremont Street in Las Vegas. We've mentioned that many times, but goddamn, I'm thorough, and you might not have seen all the breakdowns. We can also see the Atomic Wrangler in the background and someone selling Sunset Sarsaparilla. There's also posters for Maxis the Magician and Joey Baxter, both of whom were going to play at the Sierra Madre Casino. All of the people here are also exiles from New Vegas, such as showgirls and bellhops. The Ghoul and the gang then roll into town with the population believing it's the NCR coming back. I even wonder if the previous owner only made it a week, as we have tally marks that only go up to 5 on his helmet. They did a lot of stuff like this in Vietnam, and it was of course immortalized in Full Metal Jacket, and then also inspired stuff in Aliens. Sound like an idiot saying that because it's been done on a hell of a lot of stuff, but yeah, obviously, you know, it's inspired by real world things. Someone then says, get us back our town, and as we mentioned earlier, Maximus has come full circle to his NCR origins. Maximus also sees a little kid on the strip who looks up to him like he's a hero, and this is of course a callback to when he was younger and did the same thing when looking at Power Armor. As they walk the strip entrance, we can also see a Ralph sign. This is a reference to one of the stores in the games, which is called Mick and Ralph's. Thaddeus' arm then falls off, and yeah, I'm predicting by the finale he'll be a full-on super-mutant. I think this will then likely tie in with what the Ghoul learned about, and I think it'll lead into something massive. Now, we learned that the Ron Perlman super-mutant wanted the Ghoul to join in a war against the Enclave. They've been hunted to near extinction, which explains why we haven't seen them so far in Season 1 or 2. Well, apart from the one we saw at the Enclave's HQ in Season 1, but other than that, we haven't really seen them. But yeah, I suspect that the super-mutants want to stop the Enclave. However, it does have to be stated that usually in the game they're enemies, but the way that it's handled with Perlman, I do think that, yeah, they are going to be the good guys. And apologies for all the super-mutants that I've killed across the franchise, Ron. I didn't mean it. You're a nice guy after all. Now, the Enclave actually had a super-mutant as part of their secret service who was named Frank Horrigan. He was experimented on and made into the largest and strongest super-mutant imaginable. This was so they could deploy him on missions to benefit the group. However, he died in Fallout 2. And there was also the Master, who was a human who fell into the FEV vats at Mariposa military base. He mutated into a beastly monster and then began trying to turn everyone in the world into super-mutants. Kinda like the lizard in Amazing Spider-Man. But yeah, that was via his church called Unity, and he used lots of vault dwellers due to their lack of radiation exposure. So if Ron Perlman is indeed a remnant of the Master's experiments, then his war could be a war of ideologies. Either way, it's at this point that we then cut to Lucy, who's now in a yellow dress. This is a similar style to the pre-war dresses you could find in the game. Now, if you want to look your best like Lucy, then why not check out our merch store right below the video. There we've got a whole host of shirts inspired by Fallout and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. There we have our Deathclaw, Ghoul and Brotherhood ones, which are some of the best designs we have on there. We also have those ones for Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and massive discounts where the more you buy, the more money that you get off. Shabow! Lucy then makes her way down in the basement, and then judging by the trailers will arrive on the surface near Top's Casino. I don't normally do trailer spoilers, but that was shown in the first one from like 5 months ago, so if you haven't seen it, mate, it's your fault, and I'm guessing it's made the rounds. Top's Casino comes from the game and is one of the 3 casinos that operates on the strip. Now, Lucy breaking free while wearing this has a lot of symbology, or symbolism, whatever the word is. The way the dress is presented to her is a lot like how the wedding dress was presented in episode 1 of season 1. During that big long intro, we saw Hank's illusion being shattered and then her making her way to the surface, which is basically what happens with Lucy here. There he constructed this fake reality and even nuked Shady Sands to keep her safe. Now she's escaping another fake reality and wearing a dress picked for her again. The room that she woke up in was observation, and Hank was in one named simulation, so once again she's escaped a literal simulation. She's not letting the Wasteland change her, and is again rejecting the easy option of just sticking with her father. Fallout has always had the theme of breaking free from one's fate and making a choice. Whether it be the multiple dialogue trees, karma, or hell, even breaking free from the vault in the opening of some of the games, it all kind of thematically builds off what the games have given us. Heading to global comms, she then walks past the radio that Hank used in episode 1 before going for dinner with him. They're eating mashed potatoes, and I do wonder if it's the Insta-Mash from the game. It's all done up to look just like home, but she's clearly torn when she sees Uncle Rico having to serve them. His agency's gone, and his memories are as well. Everything that made him him has been wiped clean. Without our memories, we don't have any identity, and she's rebuilt her own life at the cost of someone else's. He's lost 25 years and is now just living a life of servitude. To me, it also ties in the saying of how you can either reign in hell or serve in heaven. Sure, the surface was hell, but there you at least had free will. In the vaults, it's safety and security, but it all comes with a cost. Every time the vault's been shown to us, we've always been looking up at the towering staircase in the middle. So it seems like it's ascending up into the sky, just like how heaven's often depicted. However, in reality, it's below the surface and more like hell when it comes to that level. It's incredibly bleak as well, as Biff's basically a slave to the man who nuked the NCR capital. The Ghoul also said this in episode 1.
You think they'd be nice to you? They'd find out what your daddy did?
Something we mentioned when we saw that Hank had captured him. Hank's ruined his life by cutting the Mojave NCR from supplies, and now he's made Biff into a human robot. But he is being nice, to be fair. Lucy then handcuffs her dad at the oven, and we see the truth in his willingness to help her when he can't be there to manipulate her. We also see her ghoul finger once again as she unlocks one of the cuffs. Hank then patronizes her and says the NCR are just like the Legion. They have high taxes, expansionist policies, so on and so on. We do know what the characters really like though, as Shady Sands was a bastion of freedom and a jewel in the Wasteland. However, it wasn't something controlled by Hank, so in his eyes it had to go. The Legion are also objectively evil, while the NCR are clearly the best faction out there, or was. On the surface, Norm's then freed and he goes to the radio to try and contact his sister before then trying his father. Norm has no idea his dad's a psycho who nuked the free city of Shady Sands, and he's still in a delusion that Hank's a good guy, kind of like Lucy was in season 1. He's using a radio just like Hank in episode 1, and there Hank contacted someone who he presumed was Mr. House. This moment builds off the back of episode 5, where Buds try to get the radio working at Vault-Tec HQ. Cheers, lads. He has seen the FEV file though, and is worried that whatever he thinks it is going to harm his vault. Now, in case you don't know what the FEV is, that was created by West-Tec pre-war. It was originally called the Pan-Immunity Virion, which was a cure for the new plague. After researching into the cure, the FEV then created a spin-off, as it was found that it gave radiation immunity and growth and evolutionary effects. West-Tec then ended up contaminating the water supply of Huntersville in Appalachia, which mutated the population. Yay! The virus can be transmitted by an infected person, and post-war, the Master actually dipped people in giant vats of the green liquid. It's a very hit-and-miss process, with there being different strains of the FEV. You see, some can turn out intelligent, while others can end up being hulking beasts. Some can be strong and tough in a kind of best of both worlds situation, while others can be absolute idiots who all watch Screen Crush. Now the FEV did create the super mutants that we see in the games and show. However, things always mess up, and because of this, the best subjects for this kind of experiment are in fact the Vault Dwellers. This is because you need to use a subject who has had no exposure to radiation or any previous FEV strains. I don't think it's any coincidence that Bud wanted to create a race of super managers, while Vault-Tec also had the FEV data on their database. And slowly, things are falling into place. Either way, the call is interrupted by the arrival of Bud's Buds once more, and we cut back to the wedding proceedings. The wedding dress itself definitely looks like it's inspired by Kill Bill, and even has a lovely white eye patch, which is a very nice touch. The dress is different to Lucy's as well, but I do wonder if it was also handed down through the vault like the other. Davey is officiating the event, but he isn't wearing the robes that we saw in Season 1. We can also see how much better this vault is doing compared to the other, as their crops are very healthy. Chet then says, "I don't," and with the witnesses all around, he reveals Steph's up to no good. He then tells the truth about the glasses, but stupidly destroyed the evidence. Well done, mate. Bloody cold feet you have. But then he reveals the ID, and oh god, she's a Canadian. Now in the Season 1 wedding, Lucy was on the right side, just like Chet is here. Both Lucy's husband and Steph were not who they say they were, so it's a very nice touch that these scenes are similarly laid out. She then runs off, and I really wonder where she's going to go, but we get a mirror scene where she makes a desperate dash to the control room, mirroring her fleeing from the camps. I love the way she then sits down in front of the Stars and Stripes, and obviously she hates Americans. She could even potentially kill them from this control room by starving them to death or something, and it's just a nice touch having it in the background. On the surface, we then see Maximus take on the Deathclaw, which leads to such a cool fight. The Deathclaw is such a bloody Deathclaw that you can even see it's been eating another Deathclaw. Just like the fight in Coop with Philly, Maximus gets stuck again, this time on a car. I also like how the armor says 07, and this is episode 7. Cooper then makes it to the door, but the creature starts coming for him. And yet, we've all felt like how he looks when one's facing you down. Luckily though, Maximus beheads it, and thus Coop can head inside. More arrive, and they smash him through the gates, meaning that they can now attack the population. I'm guessing the finale will be Maximus standing off against them before eventually being rescued by Thaddeus, who is going to be a super mutant. I'm telling you, he's going to be a super mutant. Meanwhile with Coop, we see as he presses a button and the Lucky 38 gate opens just like the game. We then get the handoff at both the past and present. A pre-war Freeside, we can see Coop's movie under the covers, which fits this clandestine meeting. There's also the Lucky 38 advert from the games, as well as Showgirls. The President car also looks like a Highwayman car that we mentioned earlier, or it might be the sedan made by the same company. His tie is also really interesting, as it's red, white and black. The Enclave have black flags as well as their E on their Commonwealth flag, so this might be a clue that he is indeed the Enclave. Bob is definitely into the whole president thing though, but completely unaware that they're the people who threatened her. At least that's how I took it, but yeah, let me know what you think. The couple still need to break up though, and we end with past Coop handing over the cold fusion and Lucy discovering Diane's head in the mainframe. I'm guessing because of her pacifist, peace-loving ways that she's the perfect brain that will keep people docile, but it's just using someone kind to control the rest of the world, much like what Lucy could potentially be manipulated into doing as well. The mainframe also looks a bit different than the ones that we've seen in the game, and she's wearing the same helmet that we saw Mr. House wear in the past, so potentially they might have co-opted his machines or maybe even had some involvement. Anyway, this allowed him to connect to his mainframe. The plan there was to use cold fusion for limitless energy to protect New Vegas and supercharge his predictive algorithms. President Coop then turns things on in the Lucky 38. Beside the machine, we can see disabled Securitron, and in the game, you can fight the ones in Mr. House's penthouse, depending on if you want to kill them or not, but I'm guessing the courier did if that is the case, yeah. On the desk, you can also see a Hoover Dam snow globe, which were collectibles in the game. They're basically the New Vegas version of Fallout 3's bobblehead. Now we then see Mr. House's avatar popping up on the monitor, just like we saw in the games. In case you don't know, House was basically kept alive until New Vegas, and this was through a stasis pod that had his brain connected to a computer. I think the real tragedy with Mr. House is that he needs to control everything, and this has turned his ambition into a prison. Driven by his own intellect, he built his machine of House's body, which might even play on his name, like House his body, beyond the House always wins thing. But yeah, that has pushed him to live long past his years into having a miserable existence in the pod. There's a kind of contradiction in House, as he cares greatly about humanity as a whole, but just sees the individual human as purely being a resource. His arrogance and inability to really fully trust others to control things has led to him living forever in this prison where he has to rely on others to get things done. The courier ultimately decided things for him in New Vegas, and it made him as helpless as the people that he used for his own ends in the past. His fate was kind of left up in the end of the game though, and you didn't really know what happened to him. However, with his reveal, he's clearly survived depending on whatever ending was chosen. Unfortunately though, he's been completely out of action as the strip's been overrun by death claws. We then cut to the credits and see the Canadian sign has been changed to Little America, with the flag and border being completely wrecked. Rangers have been hanged, and we pull out to see the Big 51 sign. Now, along with Little America, this was another name used to refer to the country as. The place is a complete wasteland, and it's a great way to show us the state of the country, and I kind of feel bad for them, mate, and maybe I do love Canada after all. Now going forward, we of course only have one episode left, and due to how Amazon's been acting with the screeners, I do think it's a big one. They didn't send this episode out or episode 8 early and are keeping things very close to the chest, but I have lots of theory time is on my side. Yes it is! So, I think if we look at Nolan's writing as a whole, then it becomes very obvious that he likes doing cyclical things based around the idea of reflection. There's always some payoff that reflects how things happened earlier, and even if you watch the end of Westworld, though it got cancelled before its final season, even that works perfectly as a loop. So yeah, I think if we look at the season 1 finale, then using how Nolan writes, we have an okay idea of how this things could go. So because of that, I feel like Cooper reuniting with his daughter is something that will act as a mirror of the last season's final 2 episodes. There Lucy saw her father again and then learned about his atrocities. Here Cooper's defied the odds to return to his daughter. However, I think seeing he's a ghoul and well basically a monster, I think will be similar to the reveal with Hank. Throughout the episodes, we've had lots of focus on the fix as well, and I do feel like the uranium used to heal him might also end up being his downfall. In the games, not only can the ghouls turn feral, but they can also become what's known as a glowing one. These are ghouls that have consumed so much radiation that they turn into walking atomic reactors. So it's going to be very bittersweet if that happens, just as he gets his family back. I feel like just as he sees them, he's going to get one last look and then possibly turn into a feral ghoul and then maybe even into a glowing one. This will leave him reduced to a monster and close out his tragic story. Kind of like the end of No Time to Die, if you've seen it. It's kind of a lethal thing happens and he's like, oh, well, I would rather, at least I've seen that I have a family, but I'm going to die now anyway. And yeah, ultimately, Cooper, I think, is the perfect example of what this world turns people into. Though he started out with good intentions, it ultimately led to his downfall and the end of who he was to his daughter. So to me, it's kind of something that makes sense to see him reduced to the ultimate sign of a loss of humanity in the Wasteland, which is of course the feral glowing ghoul. Now, you can't have 2 bad endings back to back, so I do think that Lucy will have a happy one. I kind of think that her dad's going to be defeated and she's going to make the choice to step away from him. Again, the games are all about choice, and just having Lucy do this I think makes perfect sense with what we've seen so far. I think this will ultimately make Maximus fully cemented in the idea that she's the person to trust cold fusion with, as she'll do the good thing no matter what. So I do think that he'll hand it over and then she'll help to improve the strip. As for her brother, I like Norm, I do, but I wonder if he's going to be more in line with his father potentially. If Hank is defeated in the season, then we kind of need a bad guy connected to Lucy for season 3. So I do think Norm might be that. Now, he's a nice guy, mate. I want to say that. I don't know how bad he is, but I think if we look at how things have been in the season, then he's done bad things. He of course killed Bud, which yeah, fair enough, but he also lied and conned these managers into following him and doing his bidding. Just like his dad would have. He didn't need the brain control device, he simply just lied, and it's led to lots and lots of issues. Anyway, that wraps up the episode, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the entry, and also what you think is gonna happen in the finale. This is the worst cosplay I've ever done, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think I should wear next week. Please drop a like on the video as well, and drop a comment with all your thoughts below. If you want to follow us on Instagram and keep up to date with what we're doing, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos every single week, and if you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month. Thank you to everyone who does it. Really appreciate it, and it just means we can buy amazing costumes and spend hours and hours in makeup like I have today to transform into a super mutant. Now, if you want something else to watch me, why not watch a video that we have on screen right now? If not though, what the hell is wrong with you? But thanks for watching this one. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.